Water. Earth. Fire. Air. Long ago, the four nations lived together in harmony. But everything changed when a meteorite fell on the Water Nation. This meteorite disrupted the balance of the world and ushered in an era of glaciations. Only the Avatar, master of all four elements, could stop them. But when the world needed him most, he vanished. Many years later, a young bender named Cain emerged from the Fire Nation. Although Cain is a powerful firebender, he still has much to learn to restore the world's balance. But I believe that Cain can save the world.
Season 2, Episode 3, The Unyielding The dry, cracked earth crunched beneath Cain's feet as he and Iara approached the remote village nestled deep within the mountains of the Earth Nation. After days of traveling, they had finally found him. Master Kenji, one of the most feared and respected earthbenders in the kingdom. Cain had hoped to learn earthbending quickly, to master the element and prepare for the inevitable clash with the Water Nation. But as they entered the village, Cain realized this would not be an easy path. Kenji wasn't just any earthbender. His reputation as a ruthless teacher and an unrelenting warrior was well known. He was strong, unyielding, and as immovable as the earth he bent. But it wasn't luck that had led Cain to him. This meeting had been orchestrated by none other than King Piendao of the Earth Kingdom. The king had tasked Kenji with a mission: to train the Avatar. He knew that the Water Nation's rising aggression would only be stopped if the Avatar could stand against them. Kenji had no choice but to fulfill the king's wishes, but he wasn't thrilled about it. The sun beat down harshly as Cain stood before Kenji. The older man eyed him critically, his muscular arms crossed, his brow furrowed with disdain. Beside Cain, Iara sensed the tension and stayed silent, watching the exchange. "So, you're the Avatar." Kenji's voice was gruff, as though the very idea left a bad taste in his mouth. "You don't look like much. Do you even know what it means to bend the earth?" Cain straightened his posture, trying to hide his nervousness. "I've come to learn from you, Master Kenji. I need to master earthbending to bring balance. I won't be able to stop the Water Nation otherwise." Kenji scoffed, walking in a slow circle around Cain, sizing him up. Earthbending is not like water, fire, or air. It's not about moving with the flow or bending to the will of the elements. Earth is unyielding. Doesn't bend to you. You bend to it. And right now, Kenji paused, stopping directly in front of Cain and meeting his gaze with a stern look. "Or weak. You wouldn't survive the first attack." Cain felt his heart sink, but he held his ground. "Then teach me. Help me become stronger." Kenji's eyes narrowed, and for a long moment he said nothing. He knew what was at stake. The Water Nation's forces were advancing, and King Piendao had made it clear. Only the Avatar could turn the tide of this war. But Kenji wasn't convinced Cain had what it took. "Fine," Kenji said at last, his tone begrudging. "But let me make one thing clear. I don't care who you are. Avatar or not, if you can't stand your ground, you'll fail. And if you fail..." He let the words hang in the air, their weight undeniable. Without warning, Kenji slammed his foot into the ground, sending a shockwave of earth spiraling toward Cain. Cain barely had time to react. He raised his hands instinctively, but it wasn't fire or water that came to his defense. It was pure instinct. He tried to anchor himself to the ground, but the force of Kenji's earthbending sent him flying backward, skidding across the dirt. Kenji shook his head in disappointment. "That was pathetic. The earth doesn't wait for you to figure things out. Strikes. And if you're not ready, you get crushed." Cain groaned as he stood, dusting himself off. Iara watched, concern flashing across her face, but she didn't intervene. This was Cain's battle to fight. Kenji's teaching method was harsh, but she knew Cain needed to be pushed if he was going to succeed. The training was grueling. For days, Kenji showed no mercy. Every attempt Cain made to bend the earth was met with sharp criticism and another harsh demonstration of his weaknesses. Cain felt himself growing more frustrated by the minute. His connection with fire and water felt fluid and natural, but earthbending was different. It required a strength of will he hadn't yet found. One evening, as Cain sat alone by the campfire, nursing his bruises and sore muscles, he looked up at the stars and closed his eyes. For the second time in recent days, he reached out to the past avatars, pleading for guidance. "Please," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I need your help. I can't do this alone. Show me what to do." But again there was only silence. The next day, as Kenji stood with his arms crossed, watching Cain attempt to lift a small boulder, Iara approached him cautiously. "Why do you push him so hard?" Kenji glanced at her, his expression unyielding. "Because the world won't go easy on him. He's the Avatar. If he can't handle this, he's as good as dead. And so are we." Before Iara could respond, a sharp horn sounded in the distance. Both Cain and Kenji turned toward the sound, their faces growing tense. From the hilltop, Iara spotted them, Water Nation soldiers. A small battalion was making its way across the valley, heading straight for the Earth Nation's borders. "They've found us," Iara whispered, her voice tight with fear. Kenji's face darkened. "So it begins. The Water Nation's dogs have come sniffing." Cain's heart raced. He wasn't ready. He still hadn't mastered earthbending. But there was no time. The Water Nation was closing in fast, and they couldn't afford to run. Kenji stepped forward, cracking his knuckles as the earth beneath him trembled in response. "You want to learn, Avatar? Fine. Now's your chance. Show me what you've got." As the Water Nation soldiers approached, the ground rumbled beneath their feet, a clear sign that the battle had already begun. Cain knew that this was the moment that would define his journey. He had to stand his ground. He had to fight. As the Water Nation soldiers descend upon the village, Cain takes a deep breath, readying himself for the challenge ahead. Kenji's voice echoes in his mind. "If you can't stand your ground, you'll fail." To be continued.